Hello and welcome to another Tinto Yaps, that time of the week where I have a look at all of the developer comments, commentary, responses and replies of the previous week and pick out the juicy bits so that you stay informed about this game that we're also incredibly hyped about. Now, before I get into it, I'm just going to say, can you please subscribe to me so that I can stop asking you to subscribe to me? Cool. Well, now that's out of the way, let's have a look at the Saturday building, as we always start with. There used to be a brewery that had many options for its production methods, and that was a little bit too many. So that has been changed now, and now we have these three production methods for the winery. You can make wine out of fruit, out of rice, or out of the new trade good, honey. Or I guess this is technically called beeswax, and there's a comment confirming that's what it's called in a later comment. A humble workshop where various raw sugars are fermented into rich and intoxicating beverages. Though simpler than traditional grape wine, these drinks are enjoyed by commoners and nobles alike, each region perfecting its own distinct flavors and techniques. Very cool. So mead. I don't know what rice wine is. It's never tried that. And then obviously you can have your basic grape wine for your, if you're classy, I guess. But yes, we had the Tinto talk on diseases, on plagues, on poxes, and all things nurglich. I was very excited about this Div Diary. I thought it was very good. I enjoyed it. Let's have a look at the comments for it. Say goodbye to all your Aztec, Mayan, and Incan empires, but not your North American empires, because there's no countries to play. Well, there is a couple, like Cahokia you can play, but there's too few countries to play up there, so you're not really gonna find too many people playing in in North America at least. But Johan here is saying it's like an apocalypse. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm worried. I really am, because I have a feeling that people playing as Tenochtitlan forming the Aztec Empire, and then, 150 to 200 years later, after the game starts, your population goes down by, was it 60 to 90%? And just imagine, in terms of development, right, in EU4. Again, I really don't like the development system, but it's the easiest parallel. Imagine you're playing as a country, say you're playing as France, you've gotten, in 150 years, you're 800 development. Do you keep playing if that 800 development turns into 100 after a certain point? Because I think the majority of players, I know the majority of players in EU4 will restart a run, or they will reload a save if they lose a war, even. Never mind losing 90% of their population. That is such an insane level of devastation. And yeah, Apocalypse 100% definitely suits it, right? That is an apocalyptic level event for the natives. And I'm worried that people will stop playing when this occurs. Now, there is one solution that I think could be done here, and I don't like the solution, just as I don't like the solution for people who are going to be, turning off the Black Death, right? Because that is a thing you can do in the game options. But I think it should be a game option to tone down, let's say, the lethality of the original, I forget what they call it actually, the Great Pestilence. I think that's going to happen, because 75 to 90% of all your pops dying is going to make people not play there. You're gonna see New World Nations be even less played in EU5 than they are in EU4, and let's be honest, they are not the most popular tags in EU4 by quite a margin, like a heavy margin. So while I personally won't be doing it in my games, I think it might be an idea to allow you to tweak the lethality, I guess, of the Great Pestilence. Yeah, that's it. That's the tweet. Moving on though. Could you say what is your intention regarding balancing frequency of the plagues, apart from the Great Pestilence and malaria, which have their own rules? Do you intend for the outbreaks to be frequent enough that the player will have to learn to live with it, or will it be rare enough that they will cause, oh my god, every time they appear? So we're going to be seeing minor plagues several times every century, which is... It feels rough. That feels rough, but it also... I mean, that's more historically accurate than just not having one for 200 years, I guess. So, yeah, it's just... it's important to see what kind of frequency we're going to be getting these nasty plagues. Of course, this is not talking about the Black Death. That's going to be a singular thing on its own. This is like, malaria and smallpox and such. In the most affected countries breakdown, can we get a relative percentage of total population column? That sounds great, actually. That sounds really good. And again, just to show, that's this here. So, most affected countries, Golden Horde, 210,000. A column here saying what their total population is, or a column here saying what percentage of the total population 210,000 represents, would be very nice. Because if you've got a country with, 1.5 million population, 210k, relatively less than if you've got a population of 120,000 and 94,000 of them are currently beplagified. So 100% I agree with this guy's suggestion. But I think that's because I understood what the suggestion was. I don't think Johan really understood that. You can see your current population at the top of the screen. Okay. That's cool, I guess, but I'm not playing all of these countries simultaneously, but I would still like to see what percentage of their country is disease-ridden. So, yeah, something like that would be nice. And as you can tell, people didn't appreciate that he didn't understand the question. So, hopefully there'll be some clarification on that, because this is a very good suggestion, in my opinion. How does the game check whether a pop is old world or new world inhabitant, and thus affect the disease accordingly? Because, some diseases affect the old world, some diseases affect the new world, right? So, the Great Pestilence, as we just said, they said it does not affect people from the old world, because we've already inoculated to all those diseases. So how does the game check whether it affects them? It knows where the culture is from. Okay. I guess that's fine. Of course, the game should know that. I do think this is important to point out, though, because that means you can essentially, if you're modding, custom make your plagues to affect certain pops. Say you want a pestilence that affects only, let's, for example, say, dwarves and goblins and other serpent spine underground races. You can have your serpent's rot, your great underground disease only really affect those pops, because you're looking at the culture and making your disease only affect those. But no, I think this is really good for modding purposes, and I would also say this would be great if we also modeled the American diseases that came the other way, right? Because contrary to, I guess, the popular notion, it wasn't just Europeans came to North America and spread the disease to North America that we've already had, and that's that. There was nothing going the other direction. Because there was. If I recall correctly, and I might be getting the disease wrong, it's either syphilis or chlamydia. One of those went the other direction. I forget which, and I maybe should have looked it up. I didn't. Sue me. Whatever. But it was not a case of, transferring one way. Like, they gave us some shit back. Just not nearly as much. Not even a percentage as much. But, it is what it is. So, yeah, having these diseases affect mostly Europeans, and then the Great Pestilence affecting those in the New World, I feel like that makes sense. And it's also, like I said, it's really good for modding potential. Wait, so the malaria death rate for colonizers who have no resistance will be 10 to 20%? Seems a bit low. After all, it's a major deterring factor of the colonization. And then he added a paper here, bro giving his sources. We like that. Indicates the mortality rate for white European troops in Sierra Leone was as high as 500 per 1,000 men in the 1800s. Cool. But that's like, you know, if you survive one malaria outbreak, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to survive the next one, or the next one, or the next one. You don't get inoculated from malaria by being in a place that has malaria going on. So 10 to 20% at every outbreak, which will happen regularly. If you're putting, 1,000 people in, Sierra Leone, sure. 10 to 20% of those are going to die the first malaria outbreak. Are you going to be able to replace those guys before the next malaria outbreak? Who knows? But they're going to get 10 to 20% of them dying, and then the next outbreak, and then the next outbreak. And those ones are going to be, I think, quite a bit more frequent than major plagues once or twice a century. These ones are going to be, I don't think I'm going to be touching Africa as a colonizer, because that just seems like a meat grinder, a malarian meat grinder. I don't like it. I don't think we should ever have gone there. It's some crazy numbers of that's crazy. I did see quite a lot of people asking for the trade good of quinine to be added to the game. Quinine is, it's the first technology that you get in Victoria 2 if you plan on going to colonization route. But quinine was something that helped against malaria, but it didn't help against all types of malaria. It was only like a certain type of malaria, so malaria is still going to get you. I don't recall when the good resistance actually came about, but either way, I don't think that's going to get added to the game. Just as I don't think so. So yeah, you deal with your malaria. It looks awful to endure as a country, but great to play around with as a player. You mentioned it's really flexible and uses scripts, so I assume new diseases can be modded in. Is it possible to have diseases with only positive modifiers and mechanics? That's a really cool idea, because you can imagine things like, there is a game that I recall playing that had some kind of like fog, there was some kind of magical fog that appeared and made all the people who interacted with this magical fog very, very happy. And I imagine that could possibly work here. Say if you had a magical forest that every year, when the trees were in bloom, it spread the pollen, and that pollen was, modeled with this disease system. But when that pollen interacted with the people that surrounded the forest, they would get buffs, happiness, all that kind of thing. So that could be a way to do that, and I think that's a cool idea. You can make diseases that are insanely unique, including purely positive modifiers. Cool. I can, in theory, use my armies to wage biological warfare. This is something that I had mentioned. Armies can contract diseases, and they'll pass it to places that they are in. So if my army contracts a disease, I'll go to my ally's capital and just sit there and be like, haha. It's rather inefficient, sure, because my soldiers will be dying. But I would argue that it is... The fact that it's doable means that people are going to do it. Because if my pups have become beplagified, disease-ridden, they're already disease-ridden. I'm not getting rid of that. That's that. It's done. But maybe I can pass that on to someone else. Unless, I hope that the meta or the correct way of dealing with part of my army has the disease isn't to split off the diseased units and move them onto a different stack, because that sounds like an insane amount of tedious micro that I don't want to deal with. I really don't. Honey or beeswax or both. It should have been beeswax. It is beeswax. The new trade good is beeswax, as I've mentioned. Let's see if I can find the doodad. And we see it. We see it. It's not there. Here. We see the beeswax right here in the medical school. But yeah, I'm really glad that that has been added. It represents all apiary goods. So it's like wool. You can eat wool in EU5. So beeswax represents all apiary goods, including honey. It can also be used to produce wine using a mead production method and beer using the Mjölska production method. Cool. I think that's really cool. People were asking for honey to be added. Adding it as beeswax is fine. I guess I would maybe have made it just be... You know what? Beeswax is fine, I guess. Like, because you got to name the good something, and naming it bees, probably not the vibe. But beeswax is probably fine. Is it a raw good? Yes, it can be gathered from locations that have the beeswax raw good. So all of the Tinto maps, all of them, are now out of date because a new trade good has been added that is not shown on any of those maps. So great. I would imagine there's going to be quite a few beeswax raw goods in England. There's quite a nice like mead like tradition there. I don't know about other countries. I assume as much that it's gonna be the same there, but I don't know for sure. So, but yeah, beeswax is gonna be a trade good that is basically everywhere, just dotted around. So that's cool. I really like that. I really like that. I have to say I'm a bit skeptical about letting you skip the Black Plague. I am too. I still am. And essentially for the reason that is pointed out here. Seems the world state would be very difficult to balance if you had to account for scenarios in which Europe either does or doesn't lose 60% of its pops. And you on here saying we don't test for the long-term balance on it. So it's a case of, yeah, you can do this, but you're basically breaking your game balance. And we are not going to test for it. We're not going to balance it. We're not going to give a shit about it because it is not the intended way to play. And I think I think they're correct. I think they're correct in not balancing for it. I don't think it is right to say, oh, we're not going to have the Black Death, so maybe we'll reduce the pop growth or reduce the starting pops or whatever. I just don't think it's worth doing. So yeah. If you choose to remove the Black Death and then you're like, look at my Europe and look at my population, I'm so cool and hardcore and stuff. It's like, it's not going to mean anything because you didn't have to go through the Black Death. Like everyone who's playing the game arguably properly is gonna. And I know there's, in a single player game, it is what it is and it's whatever, and you play the game that you want to play, but yeah, this one just doesn't sit rightly with me. And when we were first shown that it could be skipped, and I said I don't like it, I did have a pushback in my comments as well. And I expect I'm going to get the same here. I don't know. My mind hasn't changed. I don't think it's a good idea to skip the Black Death. I just don't. If you disagree with me, though, I would love to know your opinions still. I mean, I've read a bunch of opinions on it already, but maybe you... Specifically, you can convince me. We'll find out. But yeah, they don't test for balance on that. Goblin Slave here. What a name. Talking about the tsetse fly, which I believe is one of the ones that has malaria, if I recall correctly. But basically talking about the disease that the fly represents, and that it affects horses. And that might be one of the reasons why... the West African countries did not have so much in the way of cavalry. But Pavia's response here, you may have noticed we only have one endemic disease so far, malaria. Also, I'll just open that out in case you want to pause and read any of that. One endemic disease so far, malaria, compared to several epidemic diseases. It needs a bit more work to make it fully functional, but they'd like to add a few more endemic diseases if possible. So that's cool. I like that. We're not done. There may be more diseases coming. There may be more on the way. So keep an eye out for that. And then finally, for this dev diary, So the hospital only gives plague resistance, no resistance from measles, smallpox, or others, because essentially this here says plague resistance, and not all of the diseases are called plagues. So I guess it was made confusing for some people. I don't think it was that confusing. But it is all the same, so it might get renamed to disease resistance for clarity's purpose. But yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. But that is enough for this dev diary. Now we move on to Aragon. And I had a lovely comment talking about how I was mispronouncing everything. To be fair, I did ask if I was pronouncing things correctly, so that makes sense. But yeah, essentially, the funniest thing I learned was that the Spanish method of like doing th for c words is something that was based on one of the Spanish kings having a lisp, and then the language kind of conforming to the king's lisp, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. So thank you to whoever shared that comment. I can't remember your name. I apologize. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. I will say I'm still going to get all these wrong because the comment that I received about the pronunciation, there was a lot there. There's whole paragraphs of, oh, so this letter is pronounced like this, and yeah, no, that's like learning a whole ass language. So I'm still going to get it wrong. I apologize for that, but yeah, let's move into the responses. Thrudgemere, Flower Merlin, and Arthur here talking about the crowns of Iberian Peninsula. Basically, that they technically, maybe, potentially could be in a personal union just with 3 crowns within it, which is certainly interesting. You can see they had their own plans to represent the Crown of Aragon. Gotta ask, have any thoughts been put into the proposal to make it a composite, unique personal union? Given that the crowns of Iberian Peninsula are composite monarchies, is there a way to represent the constituent kingdoms of the Crown of Aragon and County Catalonia as they have their own cortes and laws, or is that too much of a hassle? Why do you not use the union mechanic between Aragon, Catalonia, and Valencia? So, instead, basically, they, of course, made it a single unified country. It's something they've internally discussed a lot. With the current mechanics, they can represent the political diversity of the cortes of each kingdom and the cortes generales through a personal union with 3 members. However, it would lose the political granularity that the king exerted in the kingdom. A simple example is that you couldn't build buildings like a bailiff in the other kingdoms of the PU, just in the one that you're currently ruling. Okay. However, so what? You change the mechanics so it lets you build in the other union members. We literally had a comment that I pointed out where in the personal union dev diary, it was even the thumbnail. It was on the thumbnail. I thought it was that interesting. Where somebody said maybe one of the things that you could do in this Crown Parliament debate thing is add in a new law so that you can build in the other people's land, right? The other members of the personal union, using the personal union treasury. So that's a simple example that has already been fixed by something that you yourself has said was interesting enough to be bookmarked. So maybe after that design idea has been implemented, because I'm fairly sure it will be, because like you bookmarked it as an interesting suggestion. Maybe not going in one-to-one identically with the suggestion, but something along those lines, maybe. Maybe this can be revisited, and maybe a custom, unique personal union with all 3 at a certain level of integration and the ability to build in one another based on personal union laws could certainly be a thing. That would be kind of neat. Taking into account that the Aragonese monarchy was much stronger on the administrative level than Castile or France, often allowing it to punch over its weight, this didn't look fine immersion and balance-wise. I mean, that's fair as well. But as anyone who plays EU4 will tell you, having 3 countries, say you've got, to simplify things, 1 country with 3 provinces versus 3 countries with 1 province each, the 3 countries are going to be stronger. no matter what the dev level is. So if you've got those 3 monarchies, those 3 dudes in the PU, maybe that is a way of them punching above their weight. Maybe. Maybe in the future they can develop even more granular PU policies and portray the complex political regime of the Crown of Aragon more accurately. With the current mechanics and features, we think this is the best possible representation. That's also entirely fair. I like that they may look into it, and there may be something that they can look at later. That's fine. Right now, this is the best way. Sure, I'll accept that. I'll agree with that. Fair enough. Nonetheless, since PUs are completely moddable, it'll be possible to easily have a mod with the crown divided into 3 different countries from the start. Also, really cool. That's fine. Is there content for the Catalan Civil War? They currently have content about the Remencha War, and this is where I was like in Spanish, this would be Remenza, I think, but I think that is also because of a lisp. I can't remember what it's supposed to be in Aragonese. I apologize, or Catalan. But they want to expand it to make it more comprehensive and connected to the Catalan Civil War. So if you played Mayo in Texas, obviously that game starts in 1356, December 1356. You'll know that the start of this game has Castile in a civil war, and let me see if I can... There, that's easier. So it starts in a civil war where we have Castile fighting against Trastamara, and that could be certainly something that is represented in the game. I don't know if this is the Remenza Civil War or if that's something different, Catalan Civil War. But this is a 1356 situation, so it's certainly within the realm of here, but this is Aragon, not Castile, so I don't know why I brought that up. Whoops. Anyway, I didn't know that these guys also had a civil war, but yeah, Civil War for Castile will be in, but also look, this entire section I probably shouldn't have brought up, because I now realize, obviously, that Aragon and Castile, totally different countries. Let's move on. Whoops. Anyway, Almogarvars is a naval levy. What exactly is a naval levy? Is it some Navy merc units? So the Almogarvars is a land levy. The tooltip just doesn't mark what is a land or naval levy as a general concept, because yes, there can be naval levies. With the transport capacity being 25, does it mean 25 units or 25 manpower? I think this is wrong. I honestly think this is wrong, right? Transport capacity of 25. Surely that's not, I can put 25 individual regiments on a boat. Like, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. Like, surely that's individual dudes. I would hope. I don't know. Poking you on just in case, because there have been some recent balance changes. It could also just be the number is wrong. It literally just could be that the number is posted as wrong. It could be like 250 men instead of 25 whatevers. Will there be a disaster for the Republic of Catalonia to revolt from Aragon as it did historically in the 1640s? Yes, they will have something about Els Segadors. Cool. I don't know what that is, but they're in there. You should have switched the order of Aragon and Bohemia to honor Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 coming out. I mean, yeah. I do currently have the music going on in the background from Kingdom Come for a reason. I am quite obsessed with this game. Not going to go further into it, but it is, yeah. Sir Hans, sure. Wenceslas is obviously better than Sigismund. Sigismund is just a barbarian. He's a fox. He's a red fox. I mean, he's no Charles. King Wenceslas is no Charles IV, but he is certainly the rightful king of Bohemia. Anyway, what about making the general privilege true to its description by requiring Parliament to approve of wars to declare them? Is that something you tried? It would be a big handicap for Aragon, and they already kind of portray it with the generic Parliament mechanics, since you can ask to get a CB. And, yeah, no CB, best CB is just something that's never been true. It's just never been true. I don't know how it became such a prominent part of, like, the internal discourse of the Europa Universalis franchise, but it's just a meme, but it's never been a true meme. It's just been wrong. Anyway. Although the old Gothic march, will the reforms we were presented here be tied to tag or primary culture? So if you convert to Gothic primary culture, we still have access to the unique advances and reforms. So some reforms are tied to culture, some to culture group, so others to the tag. And as for areas, can we rename areas in game? No, areas cannot be renamed, which, fine, sure. Is Aragon the primary culture in Catalan? Sorry, is Aragon's primary culture Catalan or Aragonese? It is Catalan, since the majority of the population, and it's also the court language, and they need to set only one. However, Aragon is integrated at the same level as Catalonian, so mechanically speaking, both populations operate similarly. Fair enough. Some quick notes before deeper immersion. Are the Pyrenees Fueros supposed to represent the Fueros de Sobrarbe? Not specifically those, but also other families, such as the Jaca one, which they consider the most widespread. Since they mention the Basilica del Pilar, is the Seo Cathedral also in the game? There's a lot of potential flavour related to the interaction of both. It would be interesting, although a bit too granular, making a note for the future nonetheless. Fair enough. Any flavour related to the Justicia if Aragon is in a personal union with the Castile? The events of 1591 may add flavour. Yes, there are events about the Justicia that may lead to the Alteraciones. Nailed it. It can also happen if Castile or Spain rules over Aragon. Also, can you show which buildings exist at the start? Subject to balance, so no. Any character from the Kingdom of Aragon itself? They have a bunch of historical ones already scripted. Cool. Will most unique country content of the game's release be built around the early game, or is it distribution of content for the 1700s as well? So there is content for those ages, as they've already shown, but let's put it this way. Novgorod, Mali, and Aragon have much more content in the early game than in the late game for historical reasons, due to the fact that they stopped existing, which is fair enough. Sure. Makes sense. Is there auxiliary military unit mechanic? If I'm playing Aragon and I conquer or vassalize parts of North Africa, is there a mechanic that allow me to recruit some of the unique naval units, if they have any, for my standing army? Or at least discount to recruiting their mercenaries? Or let's say Aragon conquers and gets personal union with Genoa. Could there be a mechanic where Aragon can recruit cap number of Genoese crossbowmen for its standing army? So it depends on how each unit is scripted, but in general they favor unique special units over Pokemon hunting. See, nah, I don't agree. I don't agree. I think if I take this example of Aragon conquering Genoa and then integrate, like, specifically, I think it should be, integrating Genoa into your, personal union or whatever, or integrating Genoa into your accepted cultures. Definitely, I think getting Genoese crossbowmen should be a thing. I think I should be able to raise levies of the cultures in which the levies are being raised from, like in Imperator. If you are playing as Rome, in Imperator Rome, and you go and you conquer Scythia, modern-day Ukraine, then I do think I should be able to raise, like I can raise in Imperator some Scythian horse archers, because the culture of that area has a lot of horse archers as their cultural levy. I think the same should be true here. I really do. Especially for levies, but also just let me construct regulars of those units. And sure, there may be an element of, Pokemon hunting, but so what? It's the same case in Imperator with Bloodlines. You can tell I've been playing a bit of Imperator lately. In Imperator, all Bloodlines, in vanilla at least, are male passed on only, other than the Argead bloodline, which means you can only ever have 2 at a maximum. Whereas in Invictus, the mod that the vast majority of people playing Imperator play nowadays, that's just not the case. All bloodlines, and there have been a lot more added, are male and female passed on. So you can play Pokemon with your bloodlines and catch them all, and it's just a fun mechanic. It is just a fun mechanic. It's not balanced, but it's fun. I think the same could be happening here. Like, I don't see a reason to prevent people from, if I want to go and conquer an area because they got a special unit, so what? Let me do that. That's kind of cool. That's cute. Let me go as Spain, conquer Wales or England and get the English longbowmen. The longbow was made in Wales, which is why I mentioned Wales. Um, it's just fun as long as you accept the culture where these units are coming from. I think is the balancing aspect. I don't see how it's a big issue. I really don't. So yeah, I would disagree. I respectfully disagree with Pavia here. Or will he try to get revenge from the Battle of Murat in 1213 and recover his ancient holdings north of the Pyrenees? It's the bit of the flavor text. Does it mean Aragon will have content for the unification of the Occitan territories? Not really, since it's not historical. But it's a hint for the player to immerse them, maybe set some off-road objectives for their gameplay. I am not of the opinion that these content should not just be purely historical. Content can absolutely be what the country is going to try to do, right? Let's take the Eastern Roman Empire. You may know it as Byzantium, because you're wrong. The Roman Empire, right? Constantinople, Empire of the Romans, whatever you want to call it. They died in 1453. So, technically, there should be no content for this tag after 1453, because they don't exist anymore. However, I would say what their goals and aims are is pretty obvious, and it would be to reunite at least, the Eastern Roman Empire lands, maybe the lands under Justinian or whatever, reconquer Rome, reconquer North Africa, get Carthage back, get Egypt back, get the Levant back, get Anatolia. Like, all of these things are things that the Empire of the Romans would want to do, so I think there definitely should be content related to that. There should be content related to, the revenge from Manzikert. There should be content related to following in Justinian's footsteps for, I got a general that you may as well be Basilius Reborn. Not Basilius, what's his name? I forgot the guy's name. Balls. Anyway, but yeah, that super amazing general that went and conquered North Africa and Italy again. Anyway, I can't remember his name. But there should be content for that, because why not? Right? That makes sense to me, to have that as content. I don't just want the content in the game to be purely historical. It also should be idealistic, right? Content should be idealistic, because, otherwise why bother playing a country that doesn't exist until the end of the game, right? In real life. If your country doesn't exist in, 1836... why bother playing it in EU5? Because you're not going to get enough content. Like, it's silly, right? There should be content, and if maybe it's not going to be content there at release, but definitely it should be content there over the game's lifespan. But anyway, moving on. Is there nothing regarding Aragon's expansion to southern Italy? Naples was the capital of Aragon for a while, after all. I didn't know that. That's kind of cool. Aragon has dynastical ties with Sicily, so it might be a good idea to establish a good relationship with them. It also has a high chance to be one of the main contenders of the Italian wars, since it already has a presence in an Italian area. Sardinia. Makes sense, fair enough. It's a bit disappointing, no content regarding Castile and the Union, said a guy called Alvaro Nunez de Lara. I wonder where you're from. War of the Two Peters? This is the Castile Civil War. I'm pretty sure that's the one that I brought up from Mayo and Taxes. Kingdom of Naples and Neopatria, just a Catalan Civil War, and that's it for the rest of the game. I mean, I agree with this. They haven't shown all the content. Like, undeniably, there will be content related to the War of the Two Peters. 100%. Like, and also the Iberian Wedding. The idea that there's not going to be content there is silly. I just think it's going to come with the Castile flavor diary. But anyway, finally, last comment that I have to share with you. The Fueros not affecting any societal values is odd to me, especially with how important they were to the governance of the states in the region. As it's a free reform that always gives useful bonuses, you will basically never remove it, regardless of your game plan. Strong, unique bonuses are good, but perhaps they shouldn't be 100% universal. The suggestion here from Nikikaga is that they would get a small shift towards free subjects and towards decentralization. Makes sense in the context of what they historically meant, as well as with the direction Aragon historically moved towards. Good suggestion. Good suggestion. Yes, that I would not be surprised if that is going to be a thing in the game before too long, which is entirely fair enough. And this is just, the only reason I bring this up is, one, to show that, you know, the Fueros may be getting, not buffed, but changed so that they're not just pure buff. There is some decision making to go on there as well. And also just to point out, if you have a good suggestion, like Nikikaga here has, your ideas can still make it into the game. And that's what these Tinto Talks are always for. That's what these are all about. So if you have suggestions, you know, head onto the forums. There is a link in every single one of my descriptions for these videos linking to the dev diaries that I'm talking about. So there will be one for this one. If you have suggestions, head on over to the forums. And also leave them in my comment section, because it's engagement, and YouTube likes engagement. It makes more people watch the videos because it gets shared more and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, with that out of the way, thank you all very much for watching. Aragon, awesome. Next week, we are going to be looking at Bohemia. Fantastic. Absolutely buzzing for that. Maybe Henry's come to see us. I feel like I need to use the Kingdom Come Deliverance music in that one as well. It's gonna happen. It's definitely gonna happen. But also next week for the Wednesday talk, so in a couple of days, we are going to be getting some information on formables, which I am excited about because I love forming countries. It is one of the great pleasures when playing these Paradox games, when you can make your name change on the map. It's just a little bit of dopamine that we all enjoy. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, likes, comments, always appreciated. And if you haven't subbed already, maybe do me a favor and sub to the channel. Until next time, toodaloo, bye-bye.